This is You've Already Been Hacked, recorded on 24 October 2020. This week, we're going to do what your professor likes to do and cover a little bit of an update to a story we covered a little earlier. So, relating to the Barnes & Noble cyber attack, we have to wonder if B&N had their network segmented. The ransomware that infected Barnes & Noble impacted the retailer's corporate systems and disabled its in-store point-of-sales terminals. And this has led some to speculate over whether a lack of business network segmentation could have assisted in the malware's propagation. The attack also prevented users of the Nook digital reader from accessing content and services. This served as a reminder to the corporate world of the unique damage that ransomware can deal to companies specializing in consumer-facing content delivery and distribution. While Barnes & Noble has not even used the word ransomware, it looks like this could have been a double extortion attack, which means files were encrypted, plus other data was stolen in an attempt to coerce a ransomware payment. A threat analyst at MSsoft did offer the possibility that systems were taken offline as a precautionary measure, adding that at least one ransomware group has previously been observed scanning for point-of-sale systems as part of their attack. While the chief security officer and vice president of Logarithm said, the incident begs the question of why two very different and distinct environments are connected to each other, calling it indication of weak internal controls. Now, this is all a little bit speculative because we don't have a lot of data of what actually happened on the inside and internal networks, but Barnes & Noble is not the first to face this dilemma. During the recent Garmin ransomware attack, which we also talked about earlier this year, a service outage occurred and consumers complained that their watches weren't working and that the aviation industry made it clear that the navigational data they had contracted for was business critical. Quote, when customer data is put out there by attackers, it becomes a customer loyalty problem and a PR situation, unquote. As we move into the last week of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, there's been a flurry of wordings highlighting cyber threats to the U.S. elections. The FBI and the Department of Homeland Security's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency this week highlighted the already pervasive concerns around influence campaigns and cyber threats to the U.S. election system from foreign actors. In an unusual and brief press conference late Wednesday, the Director of National Intelligence, along with the FBI Director, warned Americans about Iranian attackers sending spoofed emails to voters in some states in an apparent attempt to intimidate them. The DNI said that the Iranian actors had managed to obtain some voter registration data, which they were using to cause confusion, sow chaos, and undermine your confidence in American democracy. The DNI went on to describe a disturbing video and other online content that's being used for the same purpose. Certain Russian-based actors, too, have separately obtained some U.S. voter registration data, but so far, they don't appear to have used it in the same way that the Iranian groups have. On Thursday, CISA updated an earlier advisory warning about a Russia-based threat group called Energetic Bear, and several other names including Berserk Bear and Dragonfly, that have targeted dozens of U.S. state, local, territorial, and tribal government networks since September. As of 1 October, the groups have managed to exfiltrate data from at least two servers, according to CISA. Evidence suggests that the threat groups are trying to collect data to conduct future influence operations. Though it poses some risk to the U.S. election system, there is nothing to suggest that the election data itself has been compromised, according to CISA. Something of note also is the way this behavior is occurring is something that's been long-standing, all the way back from the invasion of Georgia back in the earlier 2000s. According to Mandiant, they believe that the actors are acting in support of Russian interests, and while they cannot confirm it, Media reports are suggesting that they are part of or working for Russian intelligence, and this is consistent with a long-standing tradition of Russian cyber activity. Another advisory that CISA put out recently warned about Iranian-sponsored advanced persistent threat groups breaking into a significant number of US-based networks and exploiting multiple vulnerabilities, most notably one in products from F5 networks, and another in web applications using the Telerik UI. Historically, these actors have conducted DDoS attacks, SQL injection attacks, spear phishing campaigns, website defacements, and disinformation campaigns, according to CISA. Moving across the pond for a moment, the European Union has put sanctions on Russian hackers. This past Thursday, the European Union sanctioned the head of a Russian military intelligence unit who is an alleged hacker wanted by the FBI and a Russian government-linked hacking group over a 2015 cyber attack against the German parliament. It's only the second time the EU has issued cyber-related sanctions, following July sanctions against Russia, China, and North Korea in connection with a string of unrelated cyber attacks. Now, as then, the General Staff Main Intelligence Directorate, commonly known as the GRU, is among the targets of the EU. The head of the GRU was hit with the sanctions in the Thursday action. So too was an alleged intelligence official who was previously indicted in the United States for their role in the 2016 election interference campaign. The EU has also sanctioned the GRU-connected hacking group known as Fancy Bear, among other names, which the U.S. has likewise connected to the 2016 election meddling. Now, the cyber attack against the German federal parliament targeted the parliament's information systems and affected its operations for several days. A significant amount of data was stolen, and email accounts of several MPs, as well as the chancellor, were affected. The sanctions include travel bans and the freezing of assets. Russia has contended that the Germans have presented no evidence of its involvement. The U.S. Cyberspace Solarium Commission has issued ICT supply chain security recommendation. The CSC has published a white paper outlining recommendations for improving information and communication technologies supply chain cybersecurity. The report, which is 50 pages, is a follow-on from its March 2020 report, focusing on creating a supply chain strategy for information and communications technologies, but notes that similar efforts are needed for operational technologies that control power, water, transportation, and other critical infrastructure sectors, such as medical devices and weapon systems. The white paper says the following steps are key to an ICT strategy. 1. Identify key technologies and equipment. Pretty obvious. 2. Ensure minimum viable manufacturing capacity. This would be done through strategic investment, where analysis has determined that the private capital market will not suffice, and through the creation of economic clusters. 3. Protect supply chains from compromise through better intelligence, information sharing, and product testing. 4. Simulate a domestic market through targeted infrastructure investment as necessary and ensuring the ability of firms to offer products in the United States similar to those offered in foreign markets. And 5. Ensure global competitiveness of a trusted supply chain, including American and partner companies, in the face of Chinese and anti-competitive behavior in global markets. Since I haven't brought it up yet, schools are still under attack as we go through all this remote learning. A Mississippi school district has paid a company to help it recover files after a ransomware attack. The Yazoo County School District in Mississippi has chosen to pay a private company $300,000 to regain access to encrypted files. The district became aware of the ransomware attack on Monday, the 12th of October. They took their IT systems offline and solicited help from a cybersecurity company to help them recover the files. A federal investigation was launched after the threat actors accessed the school district's information technology systems without authorization. Classes at the school are operating as normal as possible under the COVID-19 restrictions. The superintendent of the district said that staff payroll, cafeteria transactions, and the school's phone, fire, and burglar systems were not impacted by the attack. Ultimately, it was the school board that voted to pay the company $300K to recover the data that was encrypted by malware. A bit further north in New England, 2 Massachusetts school systems have had classes disrupted by a DDoS attack. Sandwich Public Schools experienced connectivity problems that disrupted remote learning for a week. The district said that the problems were due to a firewall failure. In Tingsboro, the local middle school and high school were hit with the DDoS that forced the schools to remote learn for several days. The superintendent said that the Tingsboro district IT professionals and cybersecurity providers have determined that the outages were not caused by an internal hardware issue or an issue with the district's internet provider, but instead were the result of a DDoS, apparently from a device being brought into the Norris Road campus each morning. Tingsboro's outage is currently under investigation by state education officials, an IT solutions company, and local police. It is not yet clear whether lessons were sabotaged deliberately or via a device that had been compromised unbeknownst to the owner. This is a problem as we move to remote learning and more digital platforms. It's not just about securing your corporate infrastructure. Any device that you allow access to your network could be a potential vulnerability. Moving on. People are so worried of phishing emails that they are missing legitimate messages. The Anti-Phishing Working Group says that users are becoming worried of communications, so much so that they might be ignoring legitimate ones. For example, organizations attempting to notify people that they may have come in contact with someone that tested positive for COVID-19 are finding it difficult to make sure that those people get information. The problem is that legitimate communications and fake ones are getting harder to distinguish from each other. Attackers use current events as the trigger for people to engage, which has indeed led to a scourge of pandemic-themed phishing scams since this all started. Recipients are flooded with lures related to maps, vaccines, and yes, contact tracing to trick them into opening the email. For those that follow the professor's Twitter, you may have noticed I posted a picture of a recent phishing attempt that I got related to Amazon Prime Day, something else that I had covered just earlier that previous week. So this is a real problem. They're coming at you from anything that will get you to engage, open the email, and click on the links inside. There are ways to cut down on the number of emails that are wrongly rejected as spam, but a lot of the onus is in fact on the end user to make sure they are checking for legitimacy. For starters, companies can implement domain-based message authentication reporting and conformance, or DMARC, as a protocol designed to protect their own email domains from being spoofed. There's also brand indicators for message identification, or BIMI, an emerging specification standard that allows companies to display their branded logos within an email that are sent to participating inboxes. The email must pass DMARC authentication checks for the logo to be displayed. This provides the recipient with an additional confidence that the message is truly from the sender. Although, in your professor's opinion, if it's a logo, that could be spoofed relatively easily and end users may not realize the difference. And finally, because nothing is sacred in this world, cybercriminals could be coming after your coffee. Researchers show no IoT device is too small to fall victim to ransomware techniques. While there is no question that ransomware has become one of the most feared and loathed cybersecurity attack types, the idea of your critical data sitting on your hard drive yet inaccessible is, frankly, terrifying. And a new study shows it can get much, much worse. That cup of coffee, that soul-giving liquid that you have first thing in the morning? Well, some eye-opening research came out with the announcement of a proof-of-concept ransomware attack on a coffee maker. Losing access to critical data is one thing. Losing access to my coffee would be a disaster. However, coffee makers may only be the tip of an inconceivable ransomware iceberg. Researchers are pointing out something that we should have all realized, that giving yourself the ability to control an IoT system from anywhere on the world gives anyone else the same ability, and that those IT systems can extend far beyond what you intend them to. While the infamous Target attack of 2013 took criminals from the HVAC contractor to Target's customer database, modern convergence of IT and OT systems can easily see lateral movement in the other direction. And while that's a corporate example and could have been disastrous, the current work-from-home environment means that attackers against residential IoT systems could have a significant impact on productivity, or even become entry points for attacks against enterprise assets. Simply put, some employees may not be that good at understanding precisely how great a risk their home infrastructure might be. Those connected systems can extend from that coffee maker and from refrigerators or microwaves to physical security systems and environmental controls. And as the weather changes with the seasons, people are going to be inside more and using even more of their digital assets. As connected technology moves into more aspects of our employees' lives, the possibility grows for ransomware attacks that no consumer wants to experience. And let's be honest, no enterprise security team wants to hear about. There are multiple issues around these potential ransomware attacks against consumer systems, including non-tech people negotiating with malicious actors. Those negotiations are more likely because consumer devices aren't protected by the sort of sophisticated security systems that are routine in the enterprise. It's no longer about protecting the critical infrastructure. You have to be aware of everything that touches your network. Simply put, a zero trust model may be more of the way you want to go than worrying about trying to protect your outer edge. That's all for the news this week. I'm your professor of cyber risk. We'll talk again soon.